right, everybody, welcome back to the ProPhysique Code special episode 2023 Olympia review. How's Lexie? How's Evan? How you guys doing?
Doing amazing. How are you guys?
And you are, look, you got a fresh hairdo. You're like, what'd you do this morning? You got up and did something.
Me?
Yeah, you look
Oh
fresh.
God,
You're excited.
I need to wash my hair. I have my Olympia shirt though. I am wearing that. I don't know, the past couple of days with the time change setback, I've been waking up like really early. And so I've started my days a lot earlier. So I feel like it's only 10 right now, but I feel like I've been up for forever.
Same. So I literally have zero in my inbox, zero plans to write, zero, like nothing to do because I woke up today at 4:30 and I like my body gets up at 5:30. So the time change, I looked at my phone. I was like, why? And then I was like, oh, fuck it. Just get up and go. I'll go work.
I'm
Yep.
jealous of that, Paul.
I was
Not the waking
underwater.
up the
I'm not going
inbox.
to lie. I was underwater. Last week was one of the most challenging weeks of a coach's career. 3 shows in 7 days, all in the same city. And yet I had to drive back and forth with, Evan, you did that with me too. So it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like I got lucky. I did not hit traffic at all on any of my drives. Like my timing was perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
That is lucky. That's I left Sunday morning to come back to Tampa, but I strategically left like first thing in the morning because I knew there would be no traffic and I hit record time, but
It's funny how easy that drive is with no traffic, and you're like, wow, why don't I go to Orlando more often? It's like
Right.
65 miles.
Easy.
And
It's
then
so easy.
if you hit traffic, you're like, this is the worst drive on the planet Earth because it just stops. And so it'll take 2.5 hours to go 60 miles.
For those of you that aren't from around here, I-4 is what connects Tampa to Orlando. It's literally just a straight shot, no turns the entire time, all the way till Disney. And it's exactly right about 60 miles, I think. So it takes like an hour and 5 minutes if there's no traffic.
Yep.
But you pretty much have to leave at like 5 a.m. or a very specific time, because if not, it'll take you 2.5 or 3 hours every time.
Yeah, the Disney traffic, everyone slows down to get off and on. If there's a single fender bender, everyone's stopping to look. And then, yeah, it's just, so I got lucky. I know I talked to you, Evan, at one point, and you had been in the car for a while. So like, yeah, you can literally by 5 minutes, if there's a wreck in front of you, you're just stuck. So, I will say I made the best of it. And last year I had to be in Vegas for like 9 days because of that. So, I enjoyed the going back and forth. Like it didn't feel like I was missing anything because I got to come home Tuesday and do trick or treating with my kids. Got to come home Sunday and hang out with the kids. So, yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I
I
It felt way more relaxed.
Yeah, I liked having it in Orlando. I don't know about you guys, but originally I was like, having it in Orlando kind of just doesn't feel like the Olympia because we always go to shows in Orlando but I liked having it in Orlando this year. I felt like, I mean, it was to our advantage of being closer and not having to fly, but I thought that I loved it.
I'll say this one felt much more like the Olympia than when they had it at the Hyatt in the convention center. And I don't know if that's just because that's usually where the clash is, but this year I felt like I was at the Olympia versus previous years. So I don't know if it was because it was at the Rosen. I will say this was by far and away the most convenient Olympia I've ever been to. The fact that my competitors were at the Rosen and it was a short walk to the convention center and to the show. I was able to go at the booth, run back to the room to check on them. I was checking on my girls 3-4 times a day the day before the show after every meal because I could. Like usually that's a FaceTime or something, if you're at an Airbnb, but we were all right there. So I truly enjoyed this Olympia. Like I think I maxed out the most I could get out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we were sitting there watching the show, Paul, prejudging. You're like, I'll be right back and go look at the girls. And then literally like 20 minutes later, you're back. I'm like, didn't you just leave?
Yeah. I mean, I would literally like almost jog, because I don't want to miss anything. I guess let's dig into the show a little bit because there's kind of a lot I want to get into. You Lexie said you wanted to talk about our experiences a little bit. That was kind of mine. I'll dig into it a little bit, but tell me your experience at the Olympia.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about like just our booth too, and kind of talk about
Yeah.
what we had going on for ProPhysique there, because we did have a nice little booth set up, and it was, oh my gosh, perfect location too, because it was right in front of the stage, which made things easy. We could work the booth and also watch the show. So those of you who have never been to the Olympia or who weren't there, essentially the prejudging stage was right there within the expo hall, so you could watch if you had a booth that was like close to the stage. So I thought our booth was awesome. We had a good amount of coaches there. We had, let's see, we had Kiki, we had Jess, we had Ben, we had Steven, I think John showed up for a little while, Steph, who else am I missing, Priscilla. We had a good amount of coaches there hanging out the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
Maria, did you say Maria Nemeth? I know
Oh
she
yeah,
came.
Maria was there. Yes, Maria was
Miriam,
there.
Miriam Jean.
Trying to
Yeah,
think if,
yeah.
yeah, it was just fun. I think we were selling some apparel at the booth. I know I had a couple clients that came to just watch and attend, and they had a really awesome experience. Yeah, and it was fun. Every time I go to these types of events, whether it's like an expo, a seminar, a big show, you just walk away feeling really good. Like just like it's just great to be around your
It's
people.
it's necessary, especially for those of us that have our face in the computer, putting out content. Sometimes you don't know what that's doing, and then when people walk up to you and see you and say thank you, that those are, yeah, it really does kind of fuel the fire to keep going.
It definitely does. And I know I introduced you, Paul, to one of my clients, Jen, and she, one of the things like she came to me I think 6 months ago. And one of the things like she was telling us at the expo was just she likes having like all this content that we put out. And it's great when you get to meet people in person and they kind of they tell you that, right? Because you put things out a lot of times not knowing how big of a reach it has. And then to
Mhm.
get that validation is always really cool.
Yep. That's the thing I remember when me and Lauren started our podcast, because podcasts are not like Instagram or YouTube. There's no like metric, there's no feedback, there's no comments, right? And I remember, we went to the LA Fit Expo like that next year, and we got stopped more about the podcast. And I'm like, this is so weird. People are listening to the podcast. It didn't click to me. So, same thing with our podcast. And it's I get a lot of comments on the podcast. I get a lot of comments on Evan, a lot of comments on you, our other coaches. And something I want to work on going forward is, getting more people involved with the podcast that want to be on here, because I think we have a lot of interesting perspectives. I know Danica is going to be on our next one.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a little bit of a fangirl too when it comes to like watching the actual show. And I was so excited going into this weekend because especially with bikini, that being the division like I follow a lot closer than the others, I had no idea what way it was gonna go. I truly was just so excited to see who the top 10 were going to be, because I felt like it could have gone so many different ways. Like there wasn't a clear defined winner from the get-go.
Yep. Yeah, I think there was some awesome, exciting winners this weekend. So we'll probably just go through all the divisions that we're like close to, because I know me and Evan sat there as well and watched a lot of the divisions on Saturday morning. I tried to stay. I had tickets for prejudging. I don't know how those bodybuilders did it, man. I think it was almost 11 o'clock and they still weren't on stage on Friday night. And I left. I was like, I can't, because now I got to wait for them to all do their routines, all do their call outs. And I was like, I got to be back in the morning. So I just left on Friday night. So yeah, like, I think they need to change that. I think that's silly. Bodybuilders need to go on at like a very specific time. That is the toughest division to prepare for stage, and it is the most important arguably for this. It's the Mr. Olympia. That's why it started. It was freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 70s and versus Sergio Oliva. Now it's obviously a fitness festival, but I think they need to take that focus back to that. Yeah, we can talk a little
And
bit about that.
I heard Hani have a really good idea too about the Meet the Olympians. And he was saying they should move that to Sunday to give them actual time to be able to relax. There's no pressure anymore. They can talk to people. It's just more fun rather than the night before prejudging for most of them when they're trying to get their tan, eat their food, get off their feet. It just doesn't make a lot
And
of
they
sense.
do it really late. I think it
Yeah.
started at 7 and then it opened at 8 to the non-VIP.
Right. Yeah, and I actually noticed, I mean, I was thinking about that too, because for bikini, it wasn't like it's not as big of an issue. Like for the people that competed on Saturday, I don't think it was that big of an issue, but with like wellness and like some of those men's divisions that went on Friday, that's asking a lot of the athlete to be at the Meet the Olympians that started at 8 p.m. So I saw a lot of specifically like wellness girls leaving really early, but I don't blame them. I mean,
I don't
I
think
would.
they give them rules because I asked they don't really say, it's kind of an honor to be there. And I think most of the athletes with experience have a very set plan. I know Chris Bumstead's line was literally out the door the whole time, and people didn't even realize he had left. They were still in line.
I didn't realize that either. His line and also Laura Lee's line was really, really
Yeah.
long too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's it's always cool to kind of walk around and and see the athletes though. Did both Evan, were you at the Meet the Olympians event? Did you go to that?
No, I went back because I had to get back to Orlando early on Friday. So no, I didn't go to that one this year.
Yeah, it's fun. For those of you guys listening who have never been, it's kind of like it's like a meet and greet that right before
Yeah.
the show starts, and all the athletes have like a table and they're just kind of standing there. Some of them have like merch. I know Ashley Kay had some like tank tops that she was giving away. I got one of those, and yeah, and it's just really cool to just kind of walk around and talk and introduce yourself to the athletes or get to know them, get pictures with them.
A
So
big networking event. Every single Olympian has a spot at a table. And so what typically happens is the people that have the VIP passes get there early and they bum rush the big names. And then it's really fun to just walk around and connect with people because you don't even know.
Yeah.
I had a chat with Dexter Jackson. I saw Sid Gillen. So she's in figure, and this was Friday night, and this was Thursday night, and she was going up early on Friday. She did not stand up. I was like, you just sit there all day. She goes, yep, my legs got to be fresh in the morning. So like, if you wanted to see Sid, you had to go over to her thing and see her sitting. And I was like, that's smart. That's why she's a 7-time champ, because she like plans for that stuff. So the bodybuilders, again, I just feel like the bodybuilders, they have the longest lines. Every open bodybuilder has a line. And I just feel like there's so much stress on them on these weekends.
And I know that's one thing Nick does too. Nick doesn't stand during the Meet the Olympians.
I don't think many of them do. I mean, those guys are so heavy, it would be, it could be problematic. But yeah, so like I even heard on a podcast them saying that they should be doing the men's open bodybuilding on Friday at like noon, like at the expo. They're like, just think about how many people would buy expo tickets to see that. And I'm like, man, that would be awesome. Like that room, the energy in that
they
room,
would like it too.
Oh
Probably.
yeah, the energy in that room is unmatched. Like when Chris Bumstead walked out for Classic Physique on Saturday morning, was it Saturday or Friday morning? We watched it was Saturday.
right.
Yeah, because it was Classic Physique, then men's physique, then bikini, right? So I mean, it was like you're at a concert, like the roar, because for those that don't know, the individual routines, they always let the champ go last. So the last individual routine, Chris walks out, and it's just like, I was like, Evan, watch this. It's going to feel like a concert because we're sitting. We had the seats, but behind you was the people that only had expo tickets, and they're standing. I mean, 10,000 of them, maybe more. Just like, yeah. So I don't know that the bodybuilders get that same vibe, at least in that situation. I think last year's arena was so nice. That Zappos Theater.
It was, and the stadium seating is so clutch too, right?
Yeah, there's no bad seats.
There's no bad seats there. And, I know I would assume the reason they put open bodybuilders at the night show on Friday is to sell more finals tickets on Friday too. That would be my assumption because they're the big draw, right? And not that, all divisions have their athletes, all divisions have their popularity, all divisions have their niches. But typically the more popular divisions go on Saturday night. And for the finals, right? So they have to have something on Friday kind of draw, the general people.
Well, and I think historically the open bodybuilding has always been a 2-day show. It's a Friday prejudge, Saturday final, so that there's this, it's not over. If it's close, they're going to see who comes back better. Phil Heath always came back better.
And they actually do judge it over 2 days too.
It's 50-50. Yeah. So, with probably the second day being weighted more heavily because, you know, if it's 50-50 and it's 1-to-1, but you win that second day, you got that moment. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, from the perspective of like, if I was an athlete or a coach, you know, Friday night at 11 p.m., I don't know if those guys are planning like that. Like, are they training at 6-7 o'clock for the weeks leading up to it so that their bodies are adapted? It's also East Coast time. So it's a weird time for bodybuilders to walk out on a stage. Last year in Vegas, it was the same time, but West Coast time. So I remember them complaining because it was like, for some of those guys, it was like 2 a.m. So, I mean, I guess if you're a professional athlete, you adapt, but it just felt off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, you can adapt, but you shouldn't have to, right?
I mean, what if I would just like to see them put the bodybuilders first. You know, if it starts at
Yeah.
7, maybe you have somebody come out like a smaller division, like the fitness, you know, with smaller competitors quicker. And then at like 7:30, 7:45, the bodybuilders come out for their prejudging. And if people leave, they leave, but you know, they've already bought their tickets.
Yeah. And what people need to understand too is when it comes to bodybuilders, when you have these specimens that are this lean and this big, anything can throw them off. Anything can throw them off. Like changes in peak week, changes like minute changes of sodium balance, anything like that in those guys
Yeah.
is magnified.
Yeah.
Like
Especially
you
like
can
11 o'clock at
way
night,
more
10
than
o'clock
other
at night.
divisions.
You know that.
Yeah.
You know, they've had to eat 6, 7, 8 meals by that time to hold their condition probably, and you know, sit around all day. You know, so I don't know. I'm sure they have very unique strategies. You know, I'm sure maybe someday we get Nick on here. I'm sure he'd enlighten
We'll get them
us.
on. We can get them
Nick,
on.
for those that don't know, Nick had to pull out with a hamstring injury, but he did make the best of the weekend, I saw.
Yeah, yeah. He made the best of it. He he showed up to the expo to meet the Olympians, still was there for finals. You know, I know it was really hard on him because it was the best he had ever looked. And I know it was really frustrating to not get to show that and to not be able to get prepared and get a look, right?
Yeah.
And he says, and I talked to him last night, he's like, I truly felt this was my year. I truly, honestly felt it was my year. He always says that.
I mean,
but
watching all
the
feedback from, you know, I've watched a few of the podcasts with like Jay Cutler, Milo Sarcev, you know, Dave, all those guys that are like air quotes the people that know. Everyone said that nobody was 100% this year. It was like, you know, Derek had something
I don't
missing.
think so.
Hottie wasn't as hard as he usually is. Samson was, you know, and I'm like, so if Nick was perfect, could have been his year, you know. So
And that's the thing that's really frustrating. And that's the whole thing on Nick, right? Is Nick doesn't ever really miss. He's very consistent. So if you're very consistent and everyone else is off, and nobody nailed it here, nobody did. And we could talk about that. Everyone from the top 3 had something going on. And if he would have nailed it, you know, he had a shot for that. So yeah, frustrating for him and frustrating, you know, for.
But I wasn't even talking about that, dude. You're forgetting what else happened that I saw. He got married.
Oh, yes, he did.
Now, was that before he arrived? Because I saw it was in Vegas.
I let Nick handle that part of the conversation. I'll let him tell that.
It's on social media. I'm not letting the cat out of
the
bag.
Yes. No, him and Maria are married. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
I'm gonna leave that at that for now.
So me and Lexie had a different perspective because we stayed the whole weekend. Lexie, where did you stay? I saw you were in like an Airbnb, or were you in the hotel?
No, I was at the Hyatt actually. So
I did see the blue carpet, the famous blue.
yeah, and I loved that because it was it's connected to the convention center. So it was nice because I was at the expo all day, both days. So it was kind of nice knowing like, oh, I can head back to the hotel if I forgot something or needed something. So yeah, and I also like, you know, I've done it both ways. I've stayed at Airbnbs before at these events, and I like the hotel because you're so close, and it's nice because there's a gym right there. The gym at the Hyatt is actually really nice. There's like 3 different rooms. I mean, there's a whole room for just cardio equipment. It's really nice. So I just trained there. So it was just super convenient. I didn't have to leave the whole weekend. I parked my car when I got there on Thursday and didn't leave till Sunday morning. So
same.
Nice.
I did not. I Ubered because I was at a Airbnb. It was literally 5-minute Uber away, and by the time I parked, it took me longer. So I said, you know, I'm just gonna do it was literally a $6 Uber, And then I was so nervous Saturday that I got
Yeah.
up and I literally walked. It was so nice out. It was like 65 degrees. So it took me
Was.
30 minutes. I just walked. It was 30 minutes. It was my morning coach. So I was like, this will calm me down. Actually,
Yeah.
Tyler walked with me.
Oh, that's the other coach I forgot to say that was there. Tyler. Yes.
Yeah. I hung out with Tyler a lot. It was good to see him and hang out with him. He came all the way from Canada. So it's always a thrill to get to see all the coaches. And I think, one of the things that I miss is spending time with the coaches more. Like I've gotten so busy as a coach that it's you don't realize what you're missing till you're missing it. So I think next year I'm going to make a New Year's resolution to spend more time with ProPhysique. So
You just got to create more time, Paul.
I do. I'm going to
Just make more time appear.
I've talked to Donald Trump. We're going to move to a 30-hour day.
Sweet.
So I'm going to get an extra 6 hours every day. So hopefully,
beautiful.
Awesome.
Well,
Problem
how let's talk about your three girls, the three team ProPhysique gals who competed. How was their, I guess you spent time with them before Saturday, so how was kind of that leading up to show day?
Yeah, all three of them are very different perspectives on the show. So as a coach, you're just trying to manage each person. I think, I used to ask Kim Odo, I would see him at a show and I'd be like, why aren't you backstage with your clients? And he's like, you can't be backstage when you've got a bunch of clients, because if you talk to one person for 1 second too long, the other ones get upset. And, not that any of my competitors would be that way, but, for me, it's like, okay, I have to treat each of them differently, but equally. That was my goal for this, was to make sure they all got the same level of attention, which I think the convenient factor made it nice, because they were all in the host hotel. The Olympia picks up the tab for their room. So I was literally going room, coming back to the expo. And I would do that multiple times per day. And it actually helped me out on show day, because I was able to tell them not to come over. All the bikini girls came over at like 10 o'clock. But I was asking backstage if they were going to take that union break, which they did. They didn't start bikini till almost 1:30. So I told them not even to come over till almost, 12:30, 1 o'clock. So
and honestly, that's what helped by going to things like Amateur Olympia earlier in the week, because we knew how long they were going before they would take these breaks. And we were sitting there talking, Paul. We're like, I bet bikini doesn't go on to 1:32.
Yeah, well, we were there the day before, and remember, we're like, why is wellness going on at 2 o'clock? And they're like, oh, they had to take a break. So the union that runs the convention center requires a 1 hour break for every 4 hours. So once they start the show, if they don't get through all the divisions, they have to take a break. So they decided they were just going to cut it off after men's physique, take an hour break. And so it actually worked out very nice.
That makes sense. I have to give a little shout out to, this was so cute. So Ari's mom was there. And when I obviously went to Ari's table at Meet the Olympians on Thursday, and her mom was so cute. You could just tell she's so proud, because she saw me and she was like, that's my daughter. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you must be so proud. Like, I am. I just thought that was so cute and so sweet.
I love that.
Yeah, my favorite Meet the Olympian story was actually at the Arnold, was Meet the Arnold athletes. And me and Daraja were like standing in the room with all the athletes, and Daraja, a girl, approaches her and goes, who are you here to see? And she's like, oh, I don't know. I just, I'm here to see everybody. And she's like, I'm a huge fan of Lauren Dana Miller. Have you met her? And Daraja's like, yeah, I've met her. And she's like, oh, do you compete? And Daraja's like, yeah, I compete. She's like, what division? Daraja's like, bikini. And then the girl just went on about her day. And I'm like, to this day, I wonder if that girl ever went like, that was the number 4 competitor in the world. Like, she didn't, it was a cute interaction. But I mean, that's what that Meet the Olympians is fun for, because like I got to meet Ari's mom, and actually her husband's mom is like a super fan. She comments, if you see Lisa Brothers, she comments, she's gonna love hearing her name on here. She listens to all the stuff we do. She comments on all the posts. Like, so it's just good to get to see them. And just, I'm a big fan of having supportive families. I think that really makes the sport that much better. Because a lot of athletes don't have that.
But
they compete in spite of them.
Paul, we haven't even talked about, for those that haven't known, how did everyone do?
Well, yeah, let's get into that. So last year, Daraja got 4th. So our goal this year was clearly to win, to, you know, be in that conversation for Miss Bikini Olympia. She got married, went on her honeymoon. And so when we started prep this year, she was the heaviest she's ever been to start a prep, but it was a nice shape, nice body composition. I didn't feel it was uncomfortable. What we ran into were several very hard sticking points. So this was the longest, hardest prep of her career. When she got qualified at Battle of the Bodies, we were still probably 3 or 4 pounds off her true stage look. We had a show 2 weeks later. We got down maybe another pound in 2 weeks, which shouldn't happen. We should have been able to grind. Now, we got very close this Olympia, very close. I think we were about a pound off from being in that conversation for the top 4. When I saw her on show day morning, I was like, yes, we're going to be in the conversation. Now, she didn't end up in that first call out, but they did bring her to the second call out, moved her right to center. So she held that 9-10 spot we were pretty confident about. And she's already, after, you know, dealing with the disappointment of it, you know, because I didn't know how that was going to go. You know, Daraja's very competitive. Like she's sweet, but she wants to win the Olympia. And that's the first thing she said to me at breakfast on Sunday. I want to win the Olympia. I'm like, let's go. And, you know, she basically was like, give me the hard truth from your perspective, because sometimes you guys got to remember, we're also like very close friends. So the lines get blurred between coach and athlete sometimes. And I have to remind myself, like, I'm in charge. So I said, this is what we have to do to win the Olympia. It's the same conversation I had with her after she got 14th at her first Olympia. She walked off the stage and was like, this is bull crap. This is never happening again. And that was the next year she got 6th and then 4th, right? So that's the conversation we had on Sunday. So I would be prepared. She's motivated. You know, that's all I'll say. Like, I don't know when we're going to hit the stage. It's going to come down to like how she's feeling in the months and weeks ahead. But, you know, for her and I, we need a signature win and we need to get back in that top 3, the Olympia.
You know, it's so interesting. I've been listening to a lot of like recaps from weekend. And what's so interesting about bikini is like, you know, somebody could win a show one weekend and then be last the next weekend with like almost the same look. It's like, for example, I mean, even thinking like at Hurricane Pro, Jordan Brannon won, right? And Phoebe Hagen got, I think, like 5th, right? And then at the Olympia, now it was like reverse. Jordan placed well behind Phoebe. So it's just so interesting how things can shift so quickly within a shortened period of time, placing wise.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about the bikini division is that, you know, each judge has a different perspective. And so when people say like, oh, so-and-so beat someone, you know, as a coach, I go, well, who was the judge? Right. Now, Bill was the judge at Hurricane. He is one of the premier judges. So you take his feedback very seriously. Phoebe and Ariana both took that feedback that they got from him very seriously. And they both beat Jordan, who beat them at Hurricane. I think both of them got the same feedback, tighter, right? So you take an athlete at her absolute peak, like a Jordan, she nailed it for Hurricane, you know, that then she wins. But you take some other competitors, if they bring their A game, it's hard to beat them. So it just comes down to who is on the day of the show. Like, it's very hard in pro bikini, and even judging is hard.
Oh, yeah. That's why I was so excited for it, just to see how it played out, because I was just like, it could go so many different ways. So I guess talk about Ari a little bit. So segue into her, because she had quite the first Olympia.
I feel like I've been saying this all year and maybe just nobody believes me. I know you guys believe me, but you see a physique. When I saw her in March or April, when it was April. Yeah, it was when I went to Charlotte. So she reached out to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about competing again. She hadn't competed since 2019. And I was like, funny story, I'm going to be in Charlotte. And she lives in Winston-Salem. It's like an hour away. I said, well, come to the show. We'll pose. And I just remember when I had like a couple pros competing in the show, Brittany Hamilton, one of them. And I remember just looking at Ari hitting her poses going, oh my God, like, who built you? Like, it doesn't even make sense.
I remember at Texas, which was the first show she did with you, Republic of Texas. I remember you had said she's going to go to the Olympia. Like, I remember that, and you were right.
You said this year.
She was 14th
she's going to go to Olympia
show.
This year.
I had no reason to believe that for a 14th place finish, but just seeing her up there next to all the pros, I knew her best was better than all of their bests. And, you know, it's the every girl that beat her this year, except for Issa, she beat at the Olympia, right? So like, obviously, so hearing number 6 for first call outs, I was kind of mind blown because, you know, as a coach, I was making a list of potential first call outs, and there was probably 20 that I was like, these 20 girls have a realistic shot. I don't remember the last time Romina Basualdo was not in first call outs at the Olympia, and she was number 5. So I'm like, we've got to beat her, right? Then you've got, you know, someone like Phoebe, who was 9th last year, Jordan Lee, Ashlyn, all these girls that I'm like, man, how are we gonna leapfrog these girls at the Olympia? Like, out of 49 girls to be in that top 8 is crazy, especially for your first Olympia. And I think this is her 8th show. But we did what they asked. You know, we saw Tyler a few weeks before, we saw Bill a few weeks before, and I knew she looked better, but you still don't know. And you don't know until you know. Like, that's why show day is so much anxiety, because you're like, you're free, go let the judges decide, right? I have no control over that point. So you're just, that instant where you hear 6, I was just over the moon. And beyond that, it was all a bonus. The fact that she got actually moved in from that top 8 and finished 7th. Yeah. And I think if you take the whole top 10, the Olympia, the bikini Olympia, she probably came out the biggest winner, because nobody knew who she was. And they're like, who is that? Who's in the top? Who just moved first call outs? You know, if they follow me, they know who she is. And if they follow a sport closely, but I think the general public just, you know, not familiar.
I mean, she had like 1,200 Instagram followers before that. So.
Her Instagram literally tripled in 2 days.
Yeah.
And
Ariana's one of those girls that you can see pictures, you can see video, but when you see her come out in person, it's way different.
And I don't know why that is. You know, some of the pictures that I've seen people post of different. Like her and Amy and like the top 6, they scale her down. And it's almost like, you know, she's as tall as Laura Lee.
She's tall,
and has more upper glute than Laura Lee and a shorter torso. So like, you know, when people compare her to Laura Lee, I'm like, I get it, because they're both tall, have great muscle, great shape and beauty.
They have different structures.
But they're different structures. And the reason that I was just so high on her like early in the year is because the bikini is about one thing: flaws. Most every girl is missing something from the criteria and they're trying to make up for it. She literally has 0 flaws. Like, there's not one thing on her you go, oh, if we could only add this or subtract this. Her balance is perfect. She's muscular, but not hard. Her structure is unbelievable. Like, her shoulders look like football pads. I mean, yeah, like, so I knew once I was able to like get her into the proper condition, it was going to be, this exceeded my expectations. Going into the show, my hope was to get a placing, because, you know, only the top 15 get a placing. I was hoping center of second call outs, we would be fighting for a top 10. So this was, you know, she beat Ashlyn, who beat her at Tampa. She beat Lexus Redmond, who beat her at Republic of Texas. She beat Jordan, who beat her at Hurricane. You know, like, you can't ask for better than that from your Olympia debut. And now she's already in that conversation where people are like, what's going to happen next year? Because I feel like people love the new girl. They love Amy last year and Daraja getting in that top 6 conversation. They love to follow that story. So she's, I think, the highest mover this year. I mean, she went from 0 to 7th. I don't know. Did anybody else make a big move this year up? I don't think so.
No. There was a lot of people that, like, well, I say a lot. There was a few people that really surprised me, though, that like went the other way, went down. But I mean, I guess it just goes to show that, again, like we just said, it's bikini is so subjective, or not. I don't know if that's the right word. It can move so drastically in such a short period of time.
It is, but when it comes to Ariana, it's, and I told you this, but I didn't know if it would happen. Obviously, it's like I could 100% see an Amy situation happening with her last year, where she gets in the first call and she works her way in, because when you see her, how she presents, how she walks, how she moves, like, she's built for this. And every once in a while, like, we see a lot of stuff, right? Like, we watch a lot of shows, we see a lot of bikini girls, but every once in a while, there's just those girls that walk out and you're like, oh, they just have that it factor. It's the flow, it's the movement, it's how their body's proportioned together. She has very few flaws. And
Yeah.
when you put that up there against other girls, it's gonna shine. And I'm really happy that showed on stage, because there's been very few times, because Paul, I've said this story, I'd never seen her, and we were sitting together at Texas Pro. Obviously, I saw her the day before and saw her pose and stuff like that. But when she walked out on stage, it was just completely different. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, she just grabs that attention. And that doesn't happen often. That's very rare.
Yeah. At the Texas show, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before. Angelica Teixeira was the like announcer. So
Oh, yeah.
Angelica was on the live, and I wasn't listening to the live, but people started messaging me like, oh, Angelica really likes Ari. So she came backstage before finals. And I was kind of bummed that she wasn't. I didn't think she deserved to win because we weren't tight enough. But I thought, like, man, she should have been in that first call out. She finished 14th. But at finals, they actually put her in the top 10 group, but they didn't change her placing. So I was like, oh man, sometimes you're like, oh, are they moving her around? They actually moved her to the middle of that top 10 call out at finals. And so I thought maybe she was going to get placed higher. So I was just trying to boost her. And I said, hey, Angelica, can you give us some feedback? And she literally was like, she can go to the Olympia this year. And I was like, wow. And, you should have seen Ari's face, like, wow, so, little things like that along the way have helped like boost the momentum for her. But a lot of it just comes down to, like, as a coach, when you're watching a show, there's just people that stand out to you. And you're just like, gosh, there's times where sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I could coach that girl, because like she is so close, but you don't know what's going on outside of the sport with their coaching relationship, with their lives. The one thing I'll say about Ari is, like, just be ready, because this girl is locked in on this goal. Her husband, they are like, they're all in. This is their
And
focus.
it's dangerous when you have like Ari and her husband. That's a team there that
Yeah.
has the same goal for her, right?
Yeah.
Why are there balloons going?
Congratulations.
I don't even know what was that.
That was so cool. I wish I could.
I don't know how that happened.
Is that like, did you activate that somehow?
I didn't touch anything. It
For
randomly
those
just
that can't
happened.
see,
Had that
somehow
feature.
balloons appeared behind Evan.
That was
Oh
awesome.
my gosh.
But
So Ari,
that's dangerous.
Ari's husband JD is basically trying to become an open bodybuilder. He walks around at like 260, 270. He literally eats all day, trains like a beast. So like they just live the lifestyle. Like they prep their meals. Even when they're not in prep, they prep their meals. He leaves the house every day with like 5 meals because he does construction. So just a lot of the success that you have on stage in this sport is what's going on off stage, because there's girls with amazing talent. I've had a couple girls I've had the privilege of coaching that I'm like, you have the perfect physique to go to the Olympia, but they cannot get their crap together off the stage. And that's something you got to consider. Like, you've got to have things in order. And I think with Ari, I'll let the cat out of the bag again. We're doing Atlantic Coast, because I said, I want you to sleep on it and we'll talk in the morning. And I went to see them Sunday morning before I went home. And I just said, what do you think about Atlantic? I couldn't even get it out. She goes, I want to do it. And I'm like, done. We're doing it. So I don't care if the whole Olympia shows up. I said, worst case scenario, we're in first call outs with the top 6 and we knock somebody off. So I hope somebody shows up there that beat her at the Olympia, because we're going to come in slightly better. So,
Yeah, that'll be a great show. I know 2 girls doing it, but neither
I mean,
of
in my
like-
mind, Romina Bass lives there. Ashlyn lives there. Laura Lee lives there. I'm like, I don't know who's doing this show, but
yeah, that'll
literally
be
the last show of the year. It could be just a bomb show.
very
Could
well.
be.
Yeah. How about Nade? Did she enjoy her first Olympia experience?
Yeah, I think the struggle with me with coaching her was that her first ever show was April.
Yeah.
She turned pro in May. She got
Crazy.
3rd at her pro debut in August. And then she got Olympia qualified in October, right? So like, how do you tell that person you might not be in the top 10? So my conversations with her were about, okay, what can our expectations be? She chose to jump into the hurricane. I thought, I don't know if that's the right move for us, but she was so gung-ho. She's just having so much fun competing. And again, she's got an amazing family, amazing support system. Her little girls come with her everywhere. So, we got 5th at Hurricane, which I think for her, she was like, well, that's terrible placing. But I go, but if I'd have told you before the show that you're going to beat Phoebe, because that's all she was worried about was Phoebe. And she's like, you're right, I did beat Phoebe. I go, yeah, exactly. You beat Phoebe. So, we lost to some other great competitors, but I think there was 5 qualified Olympians in that Hurricane show. So, I think that helped with our expectations. Our goal was simply to go and see where we fit in the criteria. Her big takeaway when we talked the day after was she's like, everyone is so small. She was worried she wasn't muscular enough.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that's not her problem.
Exactly. So you listening to this, Juma?
No, that the first time I saw her on stage, I was like, oh, that girl got a lot of muscle.
Right. And so I think with
Yeah.
her to be in that top 10 conversation for the Olympia, we've just got to streamline her. We've just got to keep her muscle where it is, bring her down nice and tight, and keep her full so she doesn't get like grainy looking. But I mean, she might have a better structure than Ari. Like her shoulder to waist to glute ratios are just ridiculous.
Her glutes. Oh my gosh. That's funny though, because like you mentioned the size thing, because it is interesting. I think part of like sometimes the fun of going to these events is actually seeing these competitors, like the best of the best in person. Because I mean, Instagram, it tells the scale is like it's so different. When you see a picture of somebody, you have this idea of maybe how big they are, and maybe they look bigger or smaller. Then you meet them in person, and it's like, whoa, so that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us, when we see pro bikini girls walking around in a tracksuit, you're like, wow, you are tiny. And then they get on stage and you're like, wow, you're jacked, right? It's like that illusion. And I think for her, it was like the realization, because her pro debut was Issa and Ariana. That's who she was standing by. So she was like, oh, this is pro bikini. Those girls are giants in the pro bikini.
They got a lot of muscle too. Yeah.
They're tall and muscular, right? So like, and then you go, then she went down to the show in Fort Lauderdale and she was with Daraja and Lauren Dannemiller. Very different, right? Lauren Dannemiller is much more slender than like Issa or Ari. And then Daraja's, much shorter with great shape. So like, she's still learning the sport. Like her 8th show of her life was the Olympia. So like, I think for her, it's going to be about how we manage the time off. We did apply for the Arnold, which, I think her story, whenever the people from the Arnold, I say, how do you pick people? They go, well, we want some of the contenders. We also want the story. The fact that she's from Senegal, moved over here, learned the language, raised a family, went through the military, and then made it to the Olympia in 5 shows. They might pick her. So we're we got to wait till December to figure that out. But I did not have Daraja or Ari apply for the Arnold just because we have some other things happening.
That's so hard thinking about it from that standpoint of like, if you don't find out until December, you're kind of in that like limbo phase of what approach do you take? Do you know what I mean? Because you could very well be starting prep again. That's
you applied
hard.
for it, you better be on your crap, because I think last year there was a couple girls that applied for it, got in, and then regretted it and had to pull out. And it's not a great look.
Well, with Nade though, she doesn't need more muscle, right? So it's with her, this is a perfect scenario for her.
Oh, that was my thing, is like, hey, you get in a lineup of 10 girls because that's all they take to the Arnold, and we fine tune her stage presence, we fine tune her conditioning and fullness, and she's one of those girls that when you stand next to her in the back pose, she makes everyone look bad.
Yep.
So it's gonna just be a matter of like, there is a element of recognition to pro bikini. Like, I'm sorry, but Ashley Kaltwasser's done 80, 90 pro shows at this point. Everyone's looking at her when she comes out, so you've got to overcome that. And she's got to build her resume a little bit. So we'll see. I'd give her a 50-50 shot on getting into the Arnold, but I think I like it because it gives us that mindset of like, we've got to be on right now.
Yeah. Well, it's going to, even if she doesn't make it, it's going to put her in a great place for next year because she's going to stay tight. You can continue streamlining her down. You can get the right stuff in action. Either way, it's a.
I mean, what's crazy is we're 19 weeks from the Clash. Like it's right around the corner.
Jeez.
Yeah. Right. Does that put it in perspective? And by the way, there are currently 3 girls qualified for the Bikini Olympia. All 49 of those girls done. The only ones that are qualified were the top 3, and they were already requalified. So you've got
And Jordan Brennan.
And
Jordan, and then I think a girl won a show in China, Wu Bi.
And
Yeah.
Issa's still qualified because of the
Issa's qualified for life. Ashley,
Mhm.
and then Maureen.
But Ashley was top 3.
Like Laura Lee is
So-
not qualified for the Olympia.
Oh,
Think about that. She has to do a show. Now, obviously, Laura Lee's probably going to do the Pittsburgh or the New York or something, you know, where she gets a signature win. But, you know, it's going to be a fun year of bikini. Like, I hope people are ready because I think it's going to get 2 weeks shorter.
and it
Yeah.
was, I'll tell you this, watching the show was especially bikini was a blast because we got to sit there. I got to sit there with Paul and talk, and then Kim Oda was right behind us.
Kim was right behind us.
And it was just, and for those that don't know Kim is like just like a teddy bear, right? And he's just outstanding to talk to. He's just a good person. It's just so much fun to sit there and be able to watch it with you two. It was a blast.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, I think everyone's favorite was Laura Lee.
Well, first of all, though, I want to say congratulations, Paul, for 2 girls in the top 10 at the Olympia.
Hey.
That is a massive goal. And I can't, other than Kim, I can't think of someone that's had 2 girls in the top 10 in a very
last
long
year,
time.
last year Adam had Phoebe and Ashley. This year Cash had Jordan and Ashlyn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's rare company that I do not take lightly for sure. And honestly, if you told me that that was going to be the case before the Olympia, the only thing that I wished I could have got Daraja in that top 3. That's where we wanted to end up. But to have 2 going to finals, for those that don't know, only 10 girls go to finals to get to go on the big stage. So like literally
huge.
39 girls go to prejudging and their season's over and they're not qualified for the next Olympia. It's like, it's honestly kind of like mind blowing to me that that's just how it ends. They just go to the expo, they go on stage and their season's over and they got to think about, okay, how am I going to get back to the Olympia next year? Start all over. Because a lot of those girls, it's like, it's a grind. It's like a 5th, a 3rd, a 7th, a 3rd, a 2nd, that, you know, they're grinding and they finally get that win. So, you know,
Yeah, well, I think something cool to think about too, like in Deraja's case, is I think I don't remember like the exact years, but didn't Angelica the year before she won the Olympia, didn't she get 16th in the sea of 16th the year before and then won it the next?
I don't know the history that well, but I do know that like, yeah, there are placings that go all over the place. Same with like Janet Liu. Janet Liu went from like 2nd to like 7th or 8th before she won, right? So it's not a linear progression to the top. And honestly, I love that about the division because it matters on show day. Like when I talked to Tyler about Daraja a couple of weeks before the Olympia, I said, do you think she has a shot to be in the middle? And he said, absolutely. Depends how she looks at the Olympia.
Yeah.
That's all you want. You want to know that like, it's not about reputation. It ain't about where you're from, who you know, who your coach is, blah, blah, blah. It's about when those bodies walk out on the stage, who's the best. And that's, you know, that's what you want. And that's what they do. I mean, that's why you see the turnover. There has not been a consecutive Olympia champion since Angelica, right? It's been 6 or 7 years now. So.
And you wanted to talk about Laura Lee?
Well, I want to talk about Laura Lee because I think, you know, in March, she beat everybody.
Yeah.
She beat Jen. She beat Maureen. She beat Ashley Kay. She beat all these girls. So in everybody's mind, you bring that same package, you win the Olympia. Now, you and I both were watching up close when she came out, and we both thought the same thing. We both were like, man, she looked great. But I was like, but wait a minute. I just could not take my eyes off the size of her glutes.
Yep.
I thought, well, it's Laura Lee, though, but it's Laura Lee, right? Like they're just going to make her criteria. And we turned around and asked Kim. Kim didn't have a confident answer.
No, he was like, they wanted full. I'm still a little worried. I think the glutes might be.
He's like, that might be too much. And I was like, oh, you know, because Kim's a straight shooter. You know, he wasn't like, yes, we love it. You could just, I could just tell, like, he wasn't like, she's got this. He was like,
we'll see if the judges like it.
Yeah. He's like, he said they're either going to like her or they're going to hate her. You know, they're
and, you know, and I think with her too, calling just a spade being as honest as I can possibly be. I think part of the reason her glutes look so big is because she wasn't quite in condition for the show.
Yeah, I don't know her body that well to know that, because I thought from the back her tie-ins looked pretty sharp, But then when I compared her, because I pulled up her picture from the Arnold to compare, there was more size, and I don't know if it's body fat or muscle, but she clearly had added tissue to the
Yeah,
to
and
the
her
legs
quads
too.
too.
Yeah, the
Just her
legs
quads when
had
she was
more
wide, there
width.
was a lot more leg.
Yeah,
And when she hit her front pose, I was like, is it the lighting or something? Her hamstring looked
yeah.
huge.
So I mean, obviously she's genetically gifted. So, I run into this problem with Daraja. She puts on muscle quite easily, and I'm sure Lauralee has some of the same issues where
Sure.
like they have to adjust her training to be careful. And maybe, she did have a big swing in body fat. And my thing was like maybe she couldn't tell how much muscle she had put on, right?
That could be very true.
Until the
That's a
very
great,
end.
yeah, that's a great point because she does usually gain a little bit more in the off season, so it could be hard to kind of gauge how much muscle she had put on. And I mean, she trains really hard too.
And Laura Lee can train. Like
Yeah.
you want to follow someone on Instagram and watch execution of movements. She's a very good one to watch.
Well, and her significant other has a gym down there, and he pushes her very hard too. And he's very well versed in exercise technique. So I think it's a perfect storm for her to add muscle. She was even eating a lot, training with a professional, training really hard, and focused on the Olympia. I think for all the athletes out there, like the bikini division is bikini. You can outgrow it, and that's what they're turning men's physique into. You're going to be able to outgrow men's physique now. And I think we can switch gears now and talk about, well, first of all, congrats to Jennifer Dory for becoming back to the standard. She nailed it.
She did.
And even Maureen, I think they all looked very good, but looking at the pictures after, I'm like, wow, Jen did nail it. Yeah, I thought
here's the thing too with the bikini division that I really, really like is these girls are all just good people.
Yeah.
Camaraderie backstage.
It's awesome.
That was really the only thing I asked Ari, because she was standing back there and she's like, they were all talking and I didn't want to interrupt them. And I'm like, yeah, you're like the new kid on the block. But I was like, go be nice. Now I will say this. When I went up to Pittsburgh for the second time with Daraja this year for the road to the Olympia, Jennifer Dory was there. And we had a little chat and she asked me, she goes, what was Ari's feedback? So that's how good Ari is. Jennifer Dory was asking me about her. Like, she had just gotten second at the Hurricane. So she was like, well, I saw the pictures. I thought she should have won. I said, I think it was a close decision. They told me it was 3-2. But they want her tighter and they want more detail in her core. And so she goes, well, tell her that I got the same feedback a couple of years ago. And I just started doing 10 minutes of abs every day. Nothing crazy, nothing hard, but just a couple circuits every day. And Ari's midsection was noticeably, they don't want etched abs, but I think just the visual of seeing, I don't know, did you get to pose with us the day before at the Iron Religion gym when she was hitting her poses? I think it was George, my videographer, was like, her abs look like Hawaiian rolls. And I'm like, well, she didn't have that I kicked her butt a little bit. She got leaner, but I think, that's the camaraderie you're talking about. The fact that Jen Dory was like concerned about
helping her.
She'd never
She's
met
helping
before.
her.
Yeah.
She wants her to be better.
So I told her, I said, go tell her thank you. Go tell her thank you. And Jennifer is the nicest human being.
So sweet.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I think Ari will be in that conversation for Miss Olympia in the years to come. And I think she'll also be in that conversation of the nicest human being for years to come, because there isn't a nicer human being. So like, I think the sport is in good hands in terms of like who's coming up, and I felt the same way about Daraja. One reason I want Daraja to be Miss Bikini Olympia is because I think she'd be great for the sport. Just like when Angelica was champion, just like with Jennifer champion. I don't know Maureen very much. And maybe I didn't sense that she was out and about this year. And maybe that's no fault of her own, but you love when the bikini champ is so visible at shows, at events,
That's why Angela Teixeira was so good at that.
The best
for that reason. Angelica was everywhere.
She sets the standard for Miss Bikini Olympia to be like out and about. Like, she remembers people's names. She remembers what show you did. I was a nobody when I met her, and she every time, how's your girls doing, Paul? Like, she would pose some of my clients and she'd remember the girl that was I was like, how do you remember all this stuff? So yeah, she's the standard in my mind for Miss Bikini Olympia. So
I liked getting to see like the top three. I mean, they all look fabulous, but they all have very different like structures.
Mhm.
And I thought I mean, I think that's really cool to see that the top three, they're all uniquely different in their structures, but they all have, very similar features, so to say, like that full round bubbly muscle. But it was cool to see a different kind of, well, not physique, but different structure being rewarded amongst the top.
That's the beauty of the bikini division, is that there is no standard definition that you have to, fit. It's subjective in that every person can fit the criteria depending on how they train, how much muscle they have, how they pose. Obviously, genetics are going to play a big role, but yeah, they are all different heights, different weights, different shapes. I mean, there were times when we were watching Evan that I was like, oh, I think Maureen's got it. Oh, wait a minute. No, I think Ashley has it. Oh, no, now this poses Jen. So
Yeah.
although
You
it
know,
was unanimous, I'm sure they were struggling with, decisions.
I have to just say too, it's so cool to see like Ashley Kay, how she has evolved past the like throughout the past 10 years. She was putting some side by sides yesterday on Instagram, and it's so cool. I mean, she's truly, I don't know about you guys, I don't know any other like bikini competitor that's been around for that long that's continued to evolve, like
Yep.
just seeing
She
the progressions and how much she has improved year after year to continue to meet that standard. Because I mean, it was a lot different 10 years ago. It's really just so cool to see
True.
that.
When I saw her at finals, I was like, this is a very good Ashley. I
Yes.
think is one of the
At
best
this
total
point in her
bangers she's brought.
career, she does not miss. When she comes out on
It was
stage,
so good.
she is 3 degrees from perfect at all times, right? And so this might have been her best Olympia look in a couple of
Very
years.
good.
I think so too. Yeah. Not to mention, she's just such a really good person too. Very down to earth, very humble, very hardworking. Like, I think humble is probably the best word to explain her from what I've experienced. She's just a good person.
I agree, and I think she's a little bit misunderstood because she's not the most extroverted. She's not, super outgoing. So I think a lot of people misunderstand her. But I mean, you can't ask for a better representative of the bikini division than a girl who won it 3 times, continues to place in the top three, and just shows up consistently, meeting the criteria. Like, she doesn't gain 30 pounds, she doesn't lose 30 pounds, she doesn't come in, the hardest part for me around some of these bikini competitors is the masculinization of them. I struggle, as a coach, thinking like, I hope that's not the direction they're going. So I love that they keep forcing it back down to bikini, because it could easily become mini figure. I think that was even the word being thrown around a couple of years ago. They are not letting them get strided shoulders. They're not letting them get strided glutes. They're not letting them, have like, I think, we talked to Phoebe in the lobby after the show, and I said, curious, did you get feedback? My abs were too hard. And I was like, oh, haven't heard that one.
I heard that because she did a podcast with Lorelai. They just recorded it like 2 days ago, and she mentioned that was her feedback.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm like, okay, cool. Like,
And
I think sometimes we can go to the national shows and, you go, well, that girl's got a 6-pack abs, but she might also fit the criteria the best. So, but at the Olympia, they're not letting somebody win that is going to change the entire sport for the next year. They've done that in the past, and they had to undo it.
I think they did a really good job of that this year, especially like in the men's physique category too. They're pulling that back.
Well, let's talk about the divisions that we watched on Saturday morning real quick, because
Sure.
we watched Classic Physique came out, and I think that was almost as predicted, spot for spot, who placed where. There was literally no surprises with Chris Bumstead.
I thought Terrence I thought he may have moved up a little bit, but when I saw Ramon and hers,
That's what I'm saying. Like,
why I felt,
he looked the best he's ever looked, but those guys, unlike the bikini division, they keep progressing, right? So like, they're chasing Chris. Chris keeps getting better. They're getting better, but they're not making up any ground on Chris. There's, you can make arguments for second through fourth, but I don't know that it's the first place is in jeopardy at this point, unless he gets injured or comes in off, which he hasn't. It's just going to be very hard to beat him. I almost feel like there's going to have to be somebody new that that's Chris, but better structure or something like that. I don't know.
Ramon has the best shot. He's
incredible.
Ramon needs more time, but he just, the only issue with him is when you see them stand next to each other, he just like looks kind of like a miniature version of Chris. And
He's just a little bit
smaller
downsized.
in every way. Yeah. And it's his posing's not there yet, his presentation's not there yet. But
I felt like
Ramon
Urs put on a lot of size, but he wasn't as sharp.
He was sharp in the legs, but he was fuller up top. His chest came up a lot.
Yeah.
You
wonder if he's going to be able to stay in the weight category because he looked huge to me.
He was huge, man. He was.
And then Terrence took fourth. I take it.
Yeah.
And he looked incredible.
He looked great. And it was just. I mean, it's pretty easy to predict. I don't think this was the best Chris that we've seen, but I think it was. Honestly,
I think last year he was
90%.
I think last year he was a little harder. I remember when he walked out last year thinking like, dear God.
Yeah. And that was not this year.
That's what I was. Yeah. And this year I was like, you said like, well, his chest doesn't look full. And then I was like, yeah, and his hamstrings aren't as hard as I remember them being. But by the time, I think we talked about, he came out for groups first and they let him come out last. I don't know that he bothered to get too pumped up for groups.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he's not going to be in the first call out. Then he had an hour till call outs. And I think he went backstage and filled out and pumped and ate because he came out looking much different after
much better.
Maybe the biggest surprise of the whole Olympia, is men's physique.
For sure is. I mean, so for sure.
I've been saying it all year. Like he's my guy. I want him to win. I just love Ryan Terry's physique. Like he's one of those physiques that makes me want to go work out. Mm-hmm. I want to look like Ryan Terry. Like I think, when I was a kid, I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Right. And so like, Bob Paris, like there's a few physiques that you see that you go, like they get you excited about the possibility of changing your physique. And he's one of those guys. But after getting dropped down to 6 last year, you're like,
apparently he put on 9 pounds from New York Pro until
I think he said he weighed in 204. And honestly, it might have been the most clear-cut decision of the weekend. When they moved him middle next to Brandon, I was just like, I don't see how Brandon could beat him. Like he was spot on. And that hands on hip front pose that he hits, that is so dominant because no one else hits it. And it's almost like, Andre
Ferguson does he? But he's not as hard though as
he likes to stand at that angle though. He stands, and the same with Corey Morris, who I'm like, he might have the smallest waist in the entire world. Yeah. And he stands at an angle. And I'm just sometimes wondering what would he look like if he just did the hands on hips? Because
I think the big reason that Ryan took like over the edge this year was his back development. His back shot was very impressive, but not even that. I think it improved his front shot that much more
because it gave width, lat taper.
Yep.
And then at the back, taper. his rhomboids and his spinal erectors were just 3D. And I think Brandon was kind of arching forward and he was just upright.
Yeah. Brandon was leaning because and this is why I think it was good that Ryan, for those that don't know, Ryan Terry went and stayed in New York for 2 weeks prior to the show and like trained at Bev's, and Steve Weinberger's there, and Steve really, really helps with posing. I went and posed for Steve like a year ago, and the tips he gave me were massive on my back pose. And I saw every bit of when Ryan started hitting those, I was like, that's everything that Steve wants.
Yeah.
Everything that he wants. Yeah. All of it. And like Aaron Banks has an incredible back, like by far, well, up until now was like the best back in men's physique. Yeah. He stood up there next to Ryan and it was like,
well, then the other interesting thing that happened was they did put Chiron in the first call out, but they got him right out of there. And same thing with Jeremy Buendia. They put him in the first call out. They got him right out of there. So like, I don't know if it's size with Chiron because he is swole. And this is the next year where they're going to start instituting the weight caps. So Ryan Terry at 5'9", 5'10", 204. I don't know. Is that seems pretty heavy to me. That's men's physique.
It's a big boy.
Yeah, like that's if that's in the weight cap, that means that's got to be about the tippy top.
Yeah, he's a very good standard, and it excites me because I'm not saying I could look like Ryan, but I could much more look like Ryan Terry than I ever could Chiron or Corey Morris.
Right. I think it's an attainable look, right? Like you're gonna have to put on some muscle, but yeah, and plus he's just a great story. After getting second and third, then fourth and fifth, I think he's placed second through sixth at the Olympia.
I think it was his 10th Olympia.
Yeah.
Right.
And to win it. And you know what's funny is like he was getting like second and thirds to like Jeremy Buendia and Brandon Hendrickson and you know Andre Ferguson back in the day. So now to just be the steady increasing and improving and coming back better. That was probably, you know, outside of my athletes, that was probably my favorite movement when they had Ryan in the 3-4 next to Aaron and they just swapped them. And you could just feel like the energy. He just like gave a fist pump. He knew.
Yep.
You know, he knew it was his. I'm sure he wasn't sure until, you know, and I don't know if anyone caught this when they announced, you know how Bob likes to go, the next name I say will be your Olympia champion.
It's like, and new.
And then he says, and still or and new. Well, he wasn't standing next to the current Mr. Olympia. He was standing. So when he said and new, Ryan freaked out. And I'm like, dude.
It could have been Brandon.
Could have been Brandon. Because they did the same thing with Jennifer Dory. Like Jennifer was not the champ. They said and knew, she knew because she was in the middle with Maureen. Yeah. So it could have been
I was like, I hope
Brandon
he got it. Yeah, I was
because he dropped right away and he said his name, Ryan Terry. I'm like, oh, like that would have been so awkward.
That would have been really awkward. You know what? Something else I picked up on the live stream because I watched finals on Saturday night on the live stream is it wasn't Bob, it was just the live stream commentator said something about Ashley Kay being like 4-time Olympian or Olympia champion, and she's only won it 3 times. So
yeah, he messed that up. He messed it up with Brandon too.
He said Brandon was a 2-time champ, and we looked it up.
He said it like 4 different times too.
Yeah.
I almost thought I was like, oh my God, what if like she actually wins and it's like,
slip of the tongue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but it didn't end up working out that way.
Wasn't there a whole controversy on that with the movie Generation Iron, where there was a scene where it said like Phil Heath 6-time champion, and they're like, look, they knew he was going to win. They put it in because the movie came out before the Olympia or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
Bodybuilding conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Yep. It was a great weekend though, and now it's back in Vegas next year. Back in
Vegas. I'm excited about it. It's also not on Halloween next year, so that was what made it tough for me this year. Was like my kids are at that age where like Halloween is freaking so fun. They're all dressed up, and I would be gutted if I had to miss a Halloween. So won't have to miss that. I think it's October 14th next year.
October like 10th or something. Well, sometime around then. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. I mean, to think that I may be at the Olympia for the 5th year in a row with an athlete is just mind blowing to me, because I still remember just going there and sitting there, watching it, walking around booths, getting free samples. Like to be a part of it is such an honor to feel like, yeah. So we'll have to do the booth. We had a commercial playing too, but it was quick. You had to catch it. It's like 15 seconds.
It was good though.
Yeah, it was good. So yeah, I think, goals for me for next year, 3 in the top 10. No big deal.
Easy peasy.
Hey, listen, I got some freaking rock stars on my roster these days, so I'm excited. And I think all the girls are healthy and happy. We didn't run into the ground to compete this year. So outside of Daraja, who's probably a little exhausted, but I know she's already checked in with me and hasn't gained any weight, food's up, cardio's down. So, I was able to put her in a good spot. Literally the day before the show was the best she's ever looked, the best we looked all year. So we've managed 3 years in a row to get on the Olympia stage with her best look of the year, which is ideal, and put her in a good position. Because for me, that means food's up, cardio's down on show day. So I think we'll it'll be fun for her to compete without the pressure. She had pressure this year, every move she made. I feel like the same thing happened to Amy.
You could feel it too. You could
feel it. Amy won. I mean, I can't even remember. She won Clash. She won Wasatch. She won Pittsburgh. She won New York. She won Legion. I'm probably forgetting some. So she won every show she did this year. And to go back to the Olympia and not move up a place, I don't know if the pressure got to her. I don't know if she was flat. I don't know. I haven't really dug into it, but it all happened so fast with Ari in the first call out that I almost was like, had to review in my head what actually, I was like, wait a minute. It was supposed to be Laura Lee and Amy moving up this year and they didn't. So
Yeah, Amy just posted her feedback too. I haven't read through the post, but it'll be interesting to see what they told her.
yeah, she's such a good like communicator. She does YouTube videos, she puts out lots of content. Like she's a great represent for the division. So I'll be curious to see. She's been nice to get to know too. You know, she's another one of those that you're like, the sport's in good hands.
I don't know her.
Sweetheart. She's a sweetheart.
Good.
All right, guys. Well, I think we're over an hour already. So hopefully everyone's still listening. And if you are, and you're interested in learning more about competing, we didn't mention Command the Stage, which is in February of next year, where we are going to help you guys with your training, your nutrition, your posing, in Tampa, Florida in February. It's going to be a great time.
For sure.
So go to prophysique.com events and you can find out more details. But other than that, you guys got anything?
I don't think
No,
so.
sir.
All right. Well, we'll talk on the next one.
All
Congrats
right.
to all
Okay.
the Olympia champs. Congrats to everybody from ProPhysique. And thank you guys for the help at the booth and all weekend. It was a very, very needed weekend. I felt very refreshed.
Same.
For sure.
Cool. All right, guys. Talk to you
Bye,
soon.
guys.
Peace out.